Hey, it's Matt from Black Coal Woodworking. Welcome back. This is my most ambitious project. Let's see how it goes. The first step is to draw out all the parts. I need a map. This thing requires about a dozen pieces that I need to put together. They all need to fit together, and I need to have some very accurate measurements. The piece I started with here has a hole in it, and that's because I drilled one. First thing I'm doing is getting my pieces to maximum diameter, which is about 1.5 inches. I'm using a beading and parting tool and my caliper to get this. Until now, I've been using a rough and gouge, I guess it's a spindle rough and gouge, and now my skew to make the final surface of this nice and clean. Now for the tricky bits. I made all these templates or storyboards off camera because it took quite a while. I needed to plan and draw and scheme a little till I got this far. This type of work is really new to me. There's a lot of hesitation that I cut out of the video just to make this watchable. As most any plans, you find out really quickly that what you have on paper doesn't necessarily match real life, especially when the parts are natural products like wood. So for here, I'm using the peeling cut to bring down the bulk of that diameter. This section needs to be about 3/4 inch in diameter. I do have to peel really slow, kind of like I'm sharpening a pencil. Those are the kind of fine shavings I'm getting. If I go any quicker, I'm going to destroy that hole. You'll see a lot of times where I use the beading and parting tool and my caliper to get the piece down to the correct diameter. And often you'll see like this where I've got a little piece sticking out just slightly, and that's so I can tell where my marks are. And sometimes I have to bring the storyboard back out just to remember where I'm at. Time for the first bead of the project. When you get the bead just right, you get these awesomely fine shavings or wooden noodles as we like to call them at our house. Those are the best, especially if the wood left behind is shiny. Those little wooden noodles also get in the way, but that's okay. Easy fix. Now with my 1/2 inch spindle gouge, I'm going to add some detail, some coves really. Once in a while you'll see a 3/8 inch spindle gouge also. These parts were a lot tinier than I thought. Like I said, sometimes on paper won't match what reality is. So on these little tulips, I first need to drill a hole in the end, and the way I'm doing that is by marking it with the end of my tailstock, and then with the Forstner bit, getting down to the depth that I need. Now that I've got the hole, My tailstock isn't big enough to fit in that hole and plug it, so I made this little guy. It's really just a little cone that has the right diameter on the inside for my little tailstock. That ended up working quite well. It centered the wood perfectly, and it almost felt like I just used the tailstock without something in the middle. This would be the first tulip. I'm only going to show one piece of each because there's really 4 pieces for each tulip, 4 arms, and then some of the other singular pieces you'll see. This is the top of the tulip. I first start by cutting a half bead, and I try not to cut into that little tool I made. And then on the bottom, it's really another half bead. And then I'll switch to the 1/2 inch spindle gouge to do some of the detail work, as in a little cove that makes the tulip a little more shapely. This section of the tulip also needs a bit of a cove, a very gentle one. And now it's time for some more gentle peeling cuts. I did snap one of these guys in half, just because it's really delicate. And I have to take maybe a quarter of the skew width at max, just to make sure I don't break this one. This section here is going to be about 12 millimeters in diameter, and it's meant to be a collar. It's what's going to hold the tulip up in the arm that it's going into. And this section that I'm cutting now is going to be about 10 millimeters. So this will slip through the hole that I was cutting around before. And this last little bit's the tail. It's really going to taper down to a point. Here's where I make that point a little pointier and take it off of the end there that I'm cutting now. This is easily one of my better dismounts. I'm so glad I got this on film, because almost nothing else comes off that easy. This section is the middle of the candle stand. If I ever wanted to confuse myself, looking at that storyboard and marking it out that way would do it. There are way too many marks on this thing. I probably could have just done more of the transition spots. Once you've got a little more experience like I'm getting now, then this becomes a whole lot easier. But live and learn. And that right there is the reason I had a few spontaneous urges to change the design slightly. Instead of being a full bead, we're going to aim at a bit of a half bead and shrink that other bead there that I was about to do. Fortunately for me, that's on the top, and the top looks okay having a smaller bead up there. These big cuts are always far more satisfying to do because you get so much more of the piece done in one big cut than you do with all those little bitty cuts. Especially when you start getting these really nice shavings again. This always makes it even more rewarding. Here I'm preparing for another dismount. I marked how deep or long I need that tenon because it's going to fit into another piece, and now I'm just parting it off with a skew. Not my best dismount, but not terrible. I give it a 6 out of 10. This would be the top tulip that's going to go in the center. This again is the top of the tulip, just to orient ourselves. Looking at this tulip now, I realize it's a little shorter than the rest. I guess that's okay because it's in the center. Oh, me and my sudden design inspirations. Yeah, that one's lovely. Gonna take a bit to fix that one. Sadly, for this piece, I'm gonna have to call that character and move on. This piece is just for our enjoyment. And no, I didn't decide that after having a couple of catches. It was always meant to be this way. But now it's gonna have a story for us. Now for the last part as well, to bring down the end so I can fit this together with the rest of the pieces. I apologize if you feel seasick here. I kept bumping the camera stand. Now for the base. This is about 6 inches across. It'll be just under that when I'm done. I'm using a 1/2 inch spindle gouge to get it to round. And if you rub that bevel like you should, you'll get that shiny finish like I've got there. That said, this piece didn't cut that cleanly, and I did have to do a fair bit of sanding to get it to look nice. In an attempt to clean up the face, I tried cutting across the grain like this. Kept the bevel firmly on the wood, but it still needed a fair bit of sanding. Time for assembly. I'm not using any glue at this point just because I want to dry fit it. I do plan on trying to ebonize this a little later on to see if I can get a darker color that would still look natural. Like a glove. Like a very loose glove. The glue will fix that later. As I'm putting this together, I realize that this has been definitely the most complicated piece I've ever attempted. But taking it step by step, it kind of worked out. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I know it's a bit of a longer one. Shoot me a comment if you like, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.